Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the afternoon sessions for the Transitions Academy. I'm Lavon Nelson, and together with Angela Gerberding, we'll be talking about the role of apprenticeships as it relates to ICAPS and the role of ICAPS as it relates to apprenticeships. So nothing could have set us up better for this session than the employer session we had this morning with Cheryl and Rich. That was excellent. And if anything showcased how apprenticeships can work with an ICAPS program, that did it. So I think for those of you it should have been pretty much everyone that were there for that session, you already have a jump start on what we're going to talk about, which makes our job easier. So basically, we'd like to start by going backwards. So rather than start with ICAPS and move to apprenticeships, we're going to start with apprenticeships and move to then why. Because if you don't have the foundation of what apprenticeships are and everything, then it really would be kind of hard to have that discussion first. So we're going to start with the end goal, apprenticeships, and then move towards why ICAPS. So anyway, so our first slide are some basic definitions, and we have the link to the Career Pathways Dictionary, which is a very useful tool. And I recommend that you all do put that somewhere, bookmark it, print yourself a copy, whatever you do.
Sorry.
Angela, are you trying to throw me off my game?
Yes, my mouse button got away from me.
Anyway, so I recommend that you do use that Career Pathways Dictionary. It was recently just updated too. So apprenticeships, what are they? Okay, they are a learn and earn model, but they are employer driven. They combine structured training, on-the-job training, with what is called RTI, or related training instruction. And here it says job relating instruction. And for some reason, I am losing half the slide because this little thing, there we go. Hey, Angela, put this back up. It just went, there we go. Okay, never mind. So they lead to an industry credential through the attainment of industry recognized skill standards. The training, the job training, is provided by the employer who hires. This is key. I want to point this out. They hire the apprenticeship at the start of the program and pay the participant during the program. The participant is an employee. They are paid. So that is a critical element that everyone needs to understand. And we'll talk about registered and unregistered in a minute. And our point is not to go deep into the weeds on this, just enough so that you do have a good understanding. So that is that's basically an apprenticeship, whether, as we'll talk in a minute, we do a registered apprenticeship or you do an unregistered apprenticeship, which is sort of unique to Illinois community colleges. Okay, so what's a pre-apprenticeship? This is a program that has a documented partnership with an employer designed to prepare individuals to enter and succeed in a registered apprenticeship or an on or non-registered apprenticeship. Now, this can include training aligned to a local economy, educational and career counseling, hands-on activities directly related to education and training. The point with this one is, and why we're starting with apprenticeships and going backwards, or not backwards, but we're kind of building from the end goal, is because if you do not have a partnership with, for example, the discussion this morning was perfect between Cheryl and Rich. There's a partnership there. They know when people finish their ICAPS, there's an apprenticeship program in place. So we're going to talk about some of those partners later on that you want to get to know, work with, and build relationships with. so that you have those opportunities available. Whether it is going to go into a registered or non-registered. There are also youth apprenticeship programs, 16 to 24, enrolled in secondary education or pursuing a high school equivalency, including those with disabilities. They have to have 450 hours of an OJT under a mentor, 2 semesters that lead to credit, excuse me, and an industry credential, assessment measuring successive skills, career exploration, and wraparound supports. So that is another type of apprenticeship. Today, we're going to specifically be focusing on our traditional apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship, not so much on the youth apprenticeship, just for purposes of this discussion. So you might hear these terms thrown around: USDOL, USDOL, that's the United States Department of Labor. They are the entity that oversees much of the apprenticeship work in the country. They also put out a very large number of different types of apprenticeship grants through the Employment and Training Agency side, but also to point out at the federal level, many of the other state agents, federal agencies are also hopping onto the apprenticeship bandwagon. As you all know, or some of you on this call know, apprenticeships are a great tool to use, but many were not utilizing them. But now we see apprenticeships at the Department of Energy, Federal Department of Energy, and other places such as that. RTI, we refer to that. This is a related technical instruction or training instruction that's provided by, in many cases, a community college. Registered. What we mean by registered apprenticeship is that it is on file and approved by the U.S. Department of Labor. There is paperwork that goes along with this. You commit to a certain number, the apprenticeship commits to a certain number of hours. It could be competency-based also, but you still have to meet hours. And so think about it from that perspective. Although as ICAPS program, you wouldn't be doing this side of it. You would have to think about what is going on the apprenticeship side. Unregistered are apprenticeships that still follow what we're going to cover in a minute, the 5 hallmarks of an apprenticeship program, but they do not go through an approval process with the Department of Labor. So you could have an employer, let's say an employer needs 20 welders, and they'll, and they're going to hire them and provide an apprenticeship opportunity for them. Then they don't want to go, many employers do not want to go through, nor do they see the need to go through a registered apprenticeship program for their particular trainings, particularly some of the non-registered. Now, non-traditional. Now, as we heard this morning, going back to the discussion, that is a registered apprenticeship, as she indicated, as Cheryl indicated, and it is considered, I think she said, a non-traditional trade, but you can do that. But this other option is also available. Now, I will point out that the grants for apprenticeships that come through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, as far as we know, do not allow for unregistered apprenticeships. Now, our CAPIT grant, which some of you may be familiar with, did allow for unregistered, and that was through the Department of Labor also. But that particular grant did allow. Most of the DCEO grants that they put out for apprenticeships, all of them, as far as I'm aware, require registered apprenticeships. So I wanted to make that a point of clarity. So incumbent worker. This is an employee that's hired, that's already hired, well, that's redundant, isn't it? At the work site that needs to upskill, needs additional training, etc., for purposes of what we're talking about. Apprenticeship, once again, is that paid learning by practical experience. We can use underskilled workers, and again, refer to earn while you learn. An internship, on the other hand, is learning more in a professional field, gaining supervised practical experience, and can be paid or unpaid. Now, keep in mind, we are seeing more apprenticeships in the professional side of the house. Our IT apprenticeships through CAPS grant with the Department of Labor could be in some ways considered more professional, as could the finance and insurance apprenticeships that Harper College has created over the past few years. So those also are examples, excuse me, of apprenticeships. So in order to have a true apprenticeship, now that we understand some of the definitions, the Department of Labor has established 5 hallmarks of apprenticeship. We in Illinois apply those both to registered and unregistered as far as if you're going to be doing it with us. So number 1, business involvement. Employers are the foundation of every apprenticeship program. You can't do it without an employer. 2, there is structured on-the-job training. The employer, and one of the reasons we like being able to do unregistered is because the employer can establish in an unregistered their specific needs and the time frame that they need. They may not need a 2,000-hour apprenticeship program. They may need a 100-hour apprenticeship program, a 6-month apprenticeship program. And this allows you to be more flexible in working with the employer. So, but there does have to be a structured on-the-job training. And this definition in here is specifically addressing registered apprenticeships, typically not less than 1 year. That is more of on the registered apprenticeship side. 3, related instruction. Apprenticeships combine on-the-job learning, we did talk about this, with technical education at community colleges. We don't have technical schools here in Illinois. Apprenticeship training schools, we do have some of the trades that have their own apprenticeship training schools, and they can be provided online or at the job site. Once again, addressing the employer's needs. Going back to number 1, the employer is not only the foundation, but they really are the heart of the apprenticeship too. And keep in mind, many times we think about the trades, going back to that professional apprenticeship, we think of the trades as our traditional style of apprenticeships. But as we indicated, professional apprenticeships are gaining. Number 4, there can be rewards for skill gains as they can receive increases in wages as they gain higher level of skills. And that can be worked out with the employer in an agreement that you would be required to have with an employer, outlining the apprenticeship, particularly in cases where it's unregistered. You do need to have an employer agreement outlining what you need to do. And it's also best to have it on the student side too. 5, looking for a national occupational credential, particularly with registered apprenticeship programs. This is a 100% guarantee to employers that apprentices are fully qualified for the job. This allows them, if they choose to go elsewhere, they have something to go with them, to take with them. I'm sorry, I'm really hoarse. So these are the 5 components of registered apprenticeships, and we do apply them with the exception primarily of typically not less than 1 year, because we do go less than a year with unregistered. Noting that business involvement is at the heart of it. So I think at this point, let me see if I've covered my points at this point. So I'm just going to make the introduction for Angela, and she's going to take over from here. So the next question is, now that we have some basic understanding of apprenticeships, so where does ICAPS fit into all this, or where do ICAPS fit into all of this? What's your role? And how can you provide that next step for your students in terms of moving ahead with their lives?
Great, thanks, Levon. So I'm Angela Gerberding, Director of Work-Based Learning at ICCB. If you've been on today, you've seen me a couple times. You're not done seeing me. Wait, there's more. So one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this is because ICAPS is one form of a pre-apprenticeship. And so over the years, I know we've talked about bridges and where do those lead to, and we don't want bridges to nowhere. And we found ICAPS, and so we said, okay, bridges could lead to employment, more schooling, they can lead to ICAPS. Okay, so then where do ICAPS lead? Well, most of the time, on the adult ed side, we talk about ICAPS leading to either employment or post-secondary education, additional training. But a third option is apprenticeships. And so ICAPS are, like I said, one form of a pre-apprenticeship. So if your college is doing apprenticeships in any field, that may be something that you want to check into, look at, explore. What are they doing? Do we have anybody aligning for that? Do we have any pipeline working for them? How does that look? What does that do? Per the career pathway dictionary, which is already in the chat, an ICAPS program includes dual enrollment in adult ed and career tech ed courses leading to completion of the high school equivalency, an institutional certificate, and at least one industry certification. Each program includes pathway for students to continue their education leading to a degree. In addition to the unique programming offerings, intense support services are offered to ensure students have the tools needed to complete their studies and be successful in the workforce. A career navigator works with each student, assisting the students with any obstacles that arise. I think probably most of us on the call could have given a similar type of definition to ICAPS, maybe not all of the nice group, we all know how it is when you get a group together, the definitions expand and grow because, we got to have all these words that mean everything. But it is a path leading, it is a career pathway leading towards a potential apprenticeship. So from the career pathway under pre-apprenticeships earlier, Levon, read 3 of them. The first one was training and curriculum that aligns with skill needs. I shortened them to make them all fit on the screen nice and neat earlier, but the full answer is meet the skill needs of employers and the economy of the state or the region. That's been designed to prepare participants to meet minimum entry-level requirements of the apprenticeship. Guess what? That's all ICAPS stuff. We ask that you make sure that your ICAPS are industry needed, economically needed in your area. Those are pieces, and that your training and your curriculum align with those things. That's already done within ICAPS. B is access to educational and career counseling and other support services needed by participants. ICAPS. All those wraparound services that we have with ICAPS, with whether it's tuition payment or it's lending libraries or it's childcare or transportation, that's all support services. And that we also do education and career counseling. Where are you headed next? What does this look like? Are you headed to the education side? Are you headed to the career side? That's, again, all included. And then C, the hands-on meaningful learning activities that are connected to education and training. Again, career exploration, reinforce foundational professional skills, at minimum, outline essential employability skills framework. Again, Sarah talked about essential employability skills during her last session with resources and single set of learning objectives, all ICAPS. So when you start wondering, is pre-apprenticeship really ICAPS? Yes, right there. Per the dictionary, it is. Levon, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm going to throw something in here that I meant to say earlier, kind of aligns with this, but not exactly. But I did want to point out, sometimes when you're all out there in the field and you're wondering, well, who does what at ICCB and who do I call if I have questions? Well, the beauty of this is when it comes to apprenticeships and ICAPS, as I said earlier in the opening, ICAPS is actually administered and implemented through the unit that is made up of Angela, Alex Weidenhamer, and myself and me. We make up the workforce unit in the workforce education division. So if you have questions, and then we also are responsible for apprenticeships. So if you have questions, the ICAPS and the apprenticeships both fall into the same unit. And this is a large part of what we do, and apprenticeships are becoming an even larger part. So you have, that should give you some sense of who you want to reach out to around these issues. So if you do have apprenticeship questions, that sort of thing, most certainly reach out to us, and you already know to reach out to our unit, specifically Angela on ICAPS. I just wanted to make that point to tie that together.
Yep, and that makes sense. So then we take a look at the work-based learning continuum. And Lavon and I joked, this is also probably known as benefits for the students, which is why we are all in the jobs we're in. What's going to benefit the student? What's going to be best for them? What's going to help them? So on the far left side of the screen is the student as an individual student. They're in classes, they're learning, that's that. When you get into this awareness piece, that's when you start getting into most adult education classes have to have awareness in them. Bridges would have awareness. Adult ed bridges have exploration right in there.
We hope you guys are impressed with these snazzy circles that we put in.
And you can see the different parts of exploration and how that fits into bridges. Then when you start getting into the preparation piece, that's more of where ICAPS and pre-apprenticeships fit into. And then over here on the training side, you have your apprenticeship piece. And then after the apprenticeship piece, internship, clinical experience, they really become a standalone employee. All the way up to this point, there is some sort of support happening with the student. Right. There's greater support typically on the left side. There's less support on the right side, but there is still support in that apprenticeship and in these pre-apprenticeships and ICAPS. That's why the support class is there, helping them make sure that they understand the content in the classroom. They're understanding what they're supposed to be covering. How do they change the oil? How do they measure out all the food they need in the culinary class? Those are all things, skills that they would practice as part of these other pieces. And again, your bridges and your ICAPS, they bump up next to each other.
Yep.
But they don't really overlap. I mean, they might like on the line, but they really are not an overlapping thing. They are pretty much two different things. They touch, absolutely. They're connected, but they are two different pieces. And so this is hopefully helpful for you to see and kind of big picture, moving the student from they walk in the front door going, I need to get my GED because that's what they've been told they need to do. So that's why they walk into your program. But then you start introducing them to these other pieces. You know, once you have your GED, that's a great goal. But what are you going to do the next day? How are you going to get a job with that? What's your next step look like? So you start walking them down this continuum. Hopefully they continue with you. Sometimes they go, yeah, I'm out. And they jump off the continuum, and then they come back in a couple of years and go, oh yeah, okay, maybe I need to be on this continuum. But they come back and they continue on through these things. And really, this is the goal of our programs, is that we are trying, and even on the CTE side, they're covering maybe some very early in the CTE side of exploration, but preparation for what do they need to be able to do in a welding class, the training, the apprenticeship piece, actually going and doing it as a paid person to get that experience, to then be able to move on and do their own thing as an individual. Questions so far? We've covered a lot.
I didn't see anything in the chat.
I don't see anything in the chat either. All right. So this is a continuum for student-based. But the other piece that you have to have, as Lavon has said, that's at the heart of these apprenticeship pieces and the pre-apprenticeship, is the employer side of this. You can't have a paid apprenticeship if you don't have someone to pay the apprentice. You can't do connected related instruction if you don't have somebody that needs the instruction. You can't have wage increases if you don't have anybody to pay the wages. Yeah, the employer is a piece of this. So again, starting on the left is less intensity of employer engagement. As you move further to the right side, you have more employer engagement. So while the employer engagement is way over here at the heart of the apprenticeships, in the pre-apprenticeships, you still need to make sure your employers are part of this. And what are they looking for? What do they need? Where are they at? What can you help with? And this goes along the similar lines to that other continuum, but this one's way more employer focused versus the other one being student focused.
And even though your employer isn't really at the career awareness stage, I mean, you can bring employers in as speakers and everything, but you need to be building that partnership. And sometimes that may not be with an employer at this point, and maybe with like, for example, as Angela, you talked about earlier, community college that has apprenticeship program. You want to be building that relationship at the very beginning, and then bring that along right alongside your work with the employer, because you can't, even though the intensity is increasing for employer engagement, you can't wait till you get to the pre-apprenticeship and then try to go out and find an employer and you know, for lack of a better word, throw an apprenticeship program together, because one, you won't be the one putting the apprenticeship program together primarily. You're going to look for something that you can work with someone for them to be working on the apprenticeship while you're doing the pre-apprenticeship.
Right. And I've had conversations with people on the WIOA side, and we've said the same thing. They've said they've agreed. ICAPS are pre-apprenticeships are ICAPS. One form, not be all end all, but they are one form of a pre-apprenticeship. Okay, so what can you do? It says I, but you're thinking, and I'm getting in all of your heads, what can you do? I do individually. So like Levon said, start the discussion early. Start talking even in amongst your program. Okay, are we looking to connect to an apprenticeship? Is that a goal of ours? Is that a goal at our college? Is that something our president's talking about as apprenticeships? Can we fit ourselves into that somehow? Okay, possibly. Let's see what that looks like. So then you'll need to locate and connect with the apprenticeship providers in your local area. So those could be community colleges, and we have community colleges specifically called out because there are adult ed programs that are not community colleges that may need to work with a community college. But even those of you at a community college, you need to make sure you're working with your internal people as well on apprenticeships such as corporate training or continuing ed.
Because they can identify employers
Right.
for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That could be, you know, you need to be forming these internal collaboratives if you are going to do apprenticeships.
Yes. Connect with the trades, see what's happening at the trades level with the unions. Again, some of these, depending on where you're at, you may have roadblocks because you are a community college, but maybe not. So, but these are things to consider. Business service team representatives, they were formerly known as navigators on the DCEO side, but they have recently changed their names to business service team representatives, but they are the same, essentially the same thing. Economic Development Council, WIOA partners, American Job Centers, business service team. Again, these are all possible places that apprenticeships might exist in your area. And if one is a no, then try the next one. And if that's no, try the next one. If that's no, try. There are apprenticeships likely to be happening somewhere in your area. You just have to find the right place and see how you can work with them.
Yep. And going back to the trades, I wanted to point out that we still have a program called the Highway Construction Careers Training Program. It may go by a different name now, but there are several community colleges. One of them is Black Hawk, one of them is Lewis and Clark. I think City Colleges of Chicago still has one, and several others, where they have a program through the Department of Transportation, a pre-apprenticeship program. And they have formed some very good relationships with the unions, which provide the apprenticeships. And I think they could offer some very good insight into partnerships, how to partnership with the union, you know, an entity that provides an apprenticeship. And if you are looking into doing something that's more in the trades, and you're interested in which of those colleges are doing that program, you know, you could reach out to Angela or me, because I don't have the list in front of me. I could just think of 3, you know, what quickly that I knew were still doing it. So, anyway, they could provide you with some good insight on developing those partnerships.
Yep.
And we forgot industry. One thing we left off, industry associations.
Yes. Okay. What more can you do? So that was number 1 and number 2. Here's 3 and 4. 3, talk with partners to see how your ICAPS can serve as a pre-apprenticeship for what they and the employers need. Now, that may mean you need to do some shifting within your ICAPS curriculum. That may mean you need to create a whole new one. We'll help you with that. You know, there's lots of different ways that could happen. But again, if you can make it useful for the apprenticeship or for the employers, that makes your ICAPS more available to your students, more interested. If you can say, listen, we can move you through it this way and you can go on this path, they may go, huh, that's not a bad gig. And then build ICAPS to fill the gaps of what your partners have. Sometimes your partners are going to have educational gaps, meaning they have a ton of students, but they don't have high school diplomas, or they don't have the appropriate training that they need to upskill. So maybe they're incumbent workers. So maybe their educational gaps that way. Employment gaps, they just need people. I mean, how many times have we heard in the last 3 years, we just need nurses. We just need hospitality for restaurant workers. So sometimes it's an employment gap that you're just helping fill numbers. Sector gaps, you may find, and you may want to think outside of the box with this. I heard the story once of a hospital, so you think healthcare, that funded an ICAPS program, I believe, in construction, because the hospital was wanting to add on to the hospital, and they knew that there was a shortage of construction workers, and it was going to take twice the amount of time to get their addition built, because there weren't construction workers. So the hospital said, we're going to fund some construction people to get them through so you can build our hospital. So again, just because you're talking to an employer, you may need to think, you know, a hospital is not all healthcare. There is IT. There is culinary with their food services in their cafeteria. There's, like I said, construction possibilities. There's lots of opportunities within one place. So you may need to help your employer think outside the box, but you may also need to think outside the box a little bit to see what you can do to fit. And then diversity gaps, whether that is women in welding, it's men in nursing, whether that is age, because I don't know if you've heard, but there's a whole lot of people getting ready to retire. And so how are we going to diversify our ages? How are we going to just suddenly lop off the top end of our workforce? Is it disabilities? Is it handicap? Is it racial? I mean, these are all different ways that you have students in your programs that meet these definitions, that you can help your employers meet these goals. So you've just got to kind of look at some of those gaps and see what's out there.
And so the beauty is you don't have to do the heavy lifting of the apprenticeship side.
Right.
You know, that's not, you know, yours is making the relationship and developing the partnership and finding out, you know, where those needs are, and then responding to those needs through pre-apprenticeships.
Right. All right. You guys are pretty quiet today. So we're on our last slide. We've got time. What kind of questions do you have? What have we not addressed? What have we brought up that you're still like, wait, talk about that some more. What can we help explain? And you're welcome to unmute, or you can drop questions in the chat.
I have a question. Do individuals out there really see this as a viable option for your students? And do you see how you can play a role as pre-apprentices? Pre-apprenticeship programming. I'm just curious because it is very quiet, and I'm curious if you.
Shamir, you raised your hand.
I think that it often looks great. I can see how the pieces can be put together. Unfortunately, what I am going to say, and I don't want anyone to take offense to it, is the human resources that are available in some adult education departments, I'm just going to say that because I don't think we're alone, makes the setup of this kind of difficult to have people who are actually going to be able to do this the way it needs to be done, so it's not sort of thrown together or not quite what the student was expecting based on the way we were able to promote it due to all of the things that have been written about it. We can do really well there, but I don't know that our AED departments have what we need in order to actually pull this off in the manner that would manifest in the way people want this to, because it looks really good, but I feel like it's tough in some spots.
And that's where, I can't, I don't know, I'm not in the field, and you probably raised a valid issue, but I would say that's where partnerships come in. That's where you go to the expert, because that, and find those individuals that are on the apprenticeship side, not necessarily an employer. It could be someone in between. It could be the community college it could be an industry association, that has that expertise that can help you develop. But
so Shamir, what do you think? And I'm sure the two obvious answers to my question are going to be time and money. What would help you all maybe be able to make this come about? I mean, is it money to hire somebody? Is it time because there's so many other things that you're working on instead? Is it the partnership that you need help? You just don't know who to start with? What do you think would be most helpful? And really that's to Shamir, but anybody else that's got I just don't know where to start.
The absence of money to have someone that's dedicated to doing it and being forced to try and find someone that's tied to the other portions of the college and piece it all together, that's what makes it tough. There's no one in-house who could really take this on because they have other assignments already. And
Sure.
we do have to be mindful of people. It's like, hey, yeah, you make a salary, but your job is this thing. And even if you have willingness because you love students to take on a little bit extra, you can't become like an entirely different person and then just feel good about that. Like, hey, I have 2, maybe even 3 jobs here. And that sort of feels unfair just because there was this great set of programming and or idea or construct that was put together that it would be great if we could sort of help roll out. I hope that helps out some.
No, that makes sense. And
Well,
that's what we're looking for is some
yeah.
honest answers about what is
Yep.
this, and so
These are options.
right. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I want to say again is each of the adult ed programs is already required to be running an ICAPS. So if ICAPS being connected to an apprenticeship at your institution or your area is useful and makes sense, great. It's another option out there. If it doesn't make sense at this point, what in my head, hopefully what's come out is that we are not looking for you all to go lead the charge on apprenticeships. We
No.
are looking for you to understand how ICAPS could fit into apprenticeships at your institution.
And
But
yes,
Samir, I
Angela.
totally get the
Yeah.
don't take on a whole lot more and take on and take on and take on, because then you're right. You end up with 3 full-time jobs and you're like, wait, which one am I supposed to do today? And it's impossible.
So Shamir, you're really talking about making those connections, carrying out that work, getting people into apprenticeships, that piece.
Well, I sat in the
Yeah, I was
so
trying
when I
to.
first came aboard at the college here, or in this department, I should say, I was placed next to someone in our CTE division who was responsible for establishing apprenticeships. and I saw all of the work that had to go into just getting an employer, which was Caterpillar, to get on board with it. And I was like, oh, this is a lot. I felt sorry for her. I was like, this is an entirely new role. Like, this is all you'd be able to do if you were really going to get these things put together and start to have enough of them where the students had options.
But
And it feels like I'm like, oh, ICCB hopes that we can kind of make
no,
this an adult ed. I was like, oh, that's a lot.
no, that's not, See, you all are not responsible for establishing the apprenticeships. That's exactly to the point where we're trying to make, is that CTE, for example, maybe they're not there anymore, but that CTE person is the one you should be looking to and forming a partnership, because they're responsible for establishing apprenticeships. You are doing, if you chose, you're already doing ICAPS, you're doing a pre-apprenticeship. Yeah, I'm sorry if we were not clear. It is not the expectation that adult ed start creating and establishing apprenticeships. That's why we talk so much about partnerships. That's where you go to that CTE person and say, hey, we've got 15 people coming out of welding, or we know that you have a welding apprenticeship. Do you need individuals? We have individuals that are interested in that. They're in a ICAPS program right now. We would like to know what it would take for us to finish off their pre-apprenticeship. You take over and they take care of the apprenticeship. That is really what we're talking about. So I apologize if we did not make that clear.
So Andrea, I'm catching up on the chat now. So Andrea Kuzniar, I apologize if I just butchered your last name. I have a last name that gets butchered all the time. I feel it. So you said that Elgin does a great job feeding ICAPS into apprenticeships and internships, just connecting with the apprenticeship coordinator and internship coordinator at the college. Do you want to speak to anything with that? How do you do that? How did that get started? Do you even know?
Yeah, I can speak on it for a little bit. I'm the ICAPS coordinator at ECC. And just connect with I'll have the apprenticeship coordinator come and talk to our ICAPS students once they've reached a certain level in their classes. I think they need at least thinking 8 credits or so to do internships or apprenticeships. And a lot of them are interested. A lot of the CTE fields that we have, like welding, HVAC, industrial service technician, CNC machine operator, are some of our pathways. Have the same pathways as our apprenticeships do. So we've had quite a few that would go after they're done with ICAPS, go into apprenticeships and internships.
And you're
Andrea,
just doing the ICAPS piece that leads to the
Right.
apprenticeship.
Right, just ICAPS. So I just inform the students that this is an opportunity for them, and then have the coordinators come in and talk to them about the opportunities. And then they take the lead on, and we'll connect with those students.
Okay. And that's really what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Or encouraging.
Yes.
So like Levon, I apologize if that wasn't clear. And we worried about too much apprenticeship information, but like Levon said, we kind of felt like you needed to know what we were talking about before we talked about how to get to that point. So, okay. So
Angela.
Yes.
And let me throw something in too. It suddenly occurred to me that we do have a list because we do apprenticeships. We have a list of contacts at just about every community college that are engaged in apprenticeships. And so if you are at a community college and you don't know who to go to there and you would like to start this discussion, you can email us and we can get you a name. Also, if you're not at a community college, but you would like to start this discussion and see where they have connections and that sort of thing, we can get you the name also. So that is available. And frankly, it just occurred to me when Shamir brought up his comment, and I thought, hey, we've got this list. So we will be more than happy to give you a contact name. Just reach out to us.
Yeah. Shamir, I saw your hand pop up.
Yep. So in the instance that we're going to use other resources around the college where apprenticeships are established, we have to accept the idea that they were putting together those apprenticeships for their students who were finishing either some form of a certificate or associate's program on the 4 credit side of the house, which makes our adult education students less likely to be what they would be looking for to try and give those opportunities to. So it means that in order for them to look at them that way, we'd have to find a way to put them in an education piece, i.e. an ICAPS, to make sure that our AED students are not being left out of these opportunities. But here, and I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, we have a struggle because the students have varying interests. So there's not always a huge pack of them with the same interest. And when we do get them together and there's only maybe a group of 4 or 5, it makes it really difficult financially to get an instructor to teach that support class because it sometimes becomes to a point where it's no longer feasible. And that gets in the way of a lot around here. And I don't know if it's getting in the way of others who are operating at a community college elsewhere.
Hmm.
That is something that you're not alone in that boat, Shamir. I don't think it's most community colleges in the state, but there are some that I have heard with the same, just like you said, we have a smattering of students, but to get enough of a group together to do one class that's interested in the same thing is tough. And so yes. So again, it's really, my goal in this presentation today was to provide you all with an alternative option for ICAPS if it feels like it fits beyond post-secondary ed and employment. Now, a lot of adult ed students come in and they're like, I need a job, I gotta pay my bills. So they go straight to employment, which is fine. But with employment, with apprenticeship, they could be getting paid while they're learning additional skills. But again, sometimes students don't know what they don't know, and so they don't like what they don't know, and I get all that too. So Shamir, like I said, you're not alone, but yeah, we are aware at ICCB of that struggle that's out there. I don't know that we have an answer for you other than keep trying. You'll get there.
And Shamir, we really are. I noticed. I know you said you referred to adult ed students who weren't yet ready, and that you would have to create an ICAPS. And yes, that is the whole point of this. The ICAPS would become that pre-apprenticeship. You are correct. And so it is at the point of ICAPS that the expectation, if you chose to go that way, would be that you would be finding a partner to work with that had apprenticeship knowledge, apprenticeship skills, needed, apprenticeship assistance. So not putting the apprenticeship burden on you. So.
And the other thing that just occurred to me is, again, when you're talking about working backwards, if you're talking to your apprenticeship person and they say, well, we'd really like to run an apprenticeship in welding, but our welding people, I think, like Andrea said, they had to have so many credits to get into it. That varies by college. But if they've got several welding candidates, but they can't get the math skills, they can't get the reading skills, that could be potentially, Shamir, where you would go in and build an ICAPS for their 6 students that they want to put into an apprenticeship next semester. And you do an ICAPS with them this semester, building towards that, working on those math skills or the reading skills or whatever skills it is that they need. Now you've got to work backwards as well as on the eligibility to make sure that adult ed eligible. And I know there's additional struggles with all that, but that is another way to possibly find more ICAPS students if it were to come about that way. But it doesn't always work that way either. Okay. I see your comment, Shamir, in the chat.
And that is an ongoing issue that comes up.
Yep.
We have not, it is not a resolved issue.
Right. Yep, Shamir.
Just to go alongside that comment that I made regarding finding a way to help pay the ICAPS instructors. I've seen different formats of the ICAPS support instructor. One where it's looks very much like what the model would say things should look like, where they're very in tune with the other instructor, where they visit the other class, and those are that's the good setup. And I've also seen it where it's like you were there in spirit, and the you were able to answer a few questions here or there, but you didn't make a really great attempt to learn what the students were actually learning about, and they kind of just served as a study hall, and that can have its value at certain moments. But to keep the good instructors, the money has to be there, and
Right.
and faculty are always looking to kind of balance their schedule and figure out how they're going to make their money. So I hope ICCB can really realize, like, that's a really important thing. And for this to work the way it's supposed to work, we need good people, and the way to do that sometimes is money is the only way. So I just want to reiterate that.
Sure. And you're right. I mean, there are programs that we hear of that have these amazing, and you may have heard some of them today, that have these amazing support programs, amazing partnerships, amazing support teachers all working together. And that is the ideal way. But then there's the reality side of all of this, where sometimes you do have that less than stellar instructor or whatever. And it could be because you had to fill in at the last minute because your amazing instructor took a job someplace else. And so, no, I get exactly what you're saying with money backup and that sort of thing. I mean, ICCB looks at those kinds of suggestions, comments. I don't know that we can do anything about them immediately, but we will. I mean, that's something that I can take back and see what I can get. Maybe nothing, but I can try something. So